Greetings, wanderer, and welcome to the Acropolis, the shining jewel of Athens. My name is Aspasia. Though I am not originally from Athens, I have climbed to the top of its social ladder using my wit and intellect. I've even earned the love of Pericles, one of the most powerful men in the city. The mind truly is a beautiful thing. Personally, I think the Acropolis is one of, if not the, greatest place in all of Greece. Though, considering it was the project of my partner, Pericles, I may be a touch biased. The Acropolis of Athens is a bastion of art and culture worthy of the gods themselves. Within this citadel, you will find many important sacred buildings, as well as some of the most magnificent art in all of Greece. You are in for a very enlightening visit. When you're done, come find me, and we can discuss the things you have seen. Farewell for now.
The Acropolis has gone through many changes in its long history. It began as a simple rock, was settled as early as the Neolithic period, and then became a fortress in the Mycenaean period. Stone buildings started appearing in the 7th century BCE. But the famous structures whose ruins remain visible today date mainly from a period of construction in the 5th century BCE. The location of the Acropolis is closely tied with Athens' foundation myth. Supposedly, it was the site where Athena and Poseidon competed for the city's patronage. This connection gave the Acropolis a sacred aura, and it was considered the religious heart of the city. The Temple of Athena Nike was built on the remains of old fortifications from the Mycenaean era. Worship at the temple can be traced back to the 6th century BCE, but the building itself was destroyed during the Greco-Persian Wars a century later. It was rebuilt during the Peloponnesian War. Given that the name Athena Nike roughly means Athena of victory, it was likely constructed in the hopes that Athens would win the war. Unusually, the temple depicts historical scenes of battles against the Persians instead of the more mythologically inclined art of other Greek buildings. The temple's priestess was chosen randomly among the Athenians and received a salary of 50 drachmae annually, along with skins and trophies from sacrificed animals. The Acropolis was built up over a long period, due in no small part to its partial destruction during the Greco-Persian Wars. It was in the 5th century BCE, though, that the Acropolis received its most significant improvements. This period was an extremely prosperous time for Athens, both financially and culturally. With a booming economy bolstered by trade and the Lavrion silver mines, Pericles, the leader of Athens, financed a huge project to rebuild the citadel. He enlisted the help of renowned artists, like the sculptor Phidias, as well as the architects Iktinos and Callicrates. Together, they erected buildings like the Parthenon and the Propylaea Gateway. Pericles' goal was to make the Acropolis into a glorious monument to the gods and to mortal Athenians.
Ποιος εμέ περιπέζει.
Oh, well, easy there, bud.
Behind the Propylaea was the giant bronze statue of Athena Promachos, or Athena who fights on the front lines. That name was reflected in the spear and shield the statue held in its hands. It was erected in the mid-5th century BCE by the artist Phidias. According to an inscription, it took 9 years to make and cost almost 500,000 drachmae. At approximately 10 meters tall, the statue was apparently so large that Pausanias claimed its helmet and spear tip could be seen from the sea near Cape Sunion, 60 kilometers away. The ornamentation on the statue's shield was engraved by the metalsmith Mies. The Aerophoroi were young girls between the ages of 7 and 11 who were in charge of special rites. A list of 4 girls was drafted by the Assembly of Citizens, from which the High Magistrate, the Archon Basileus, chose 2 to serve as Aerophoroi for the year. The girls lived in a house on the Acropolis. They were in charge of carrying sacred objects and weaving the peplos of Athena. The peplos was a sacred robe offered to Athena during Panathenea, a festival held in her honor. The Erechtheion was an atypical temple. It was dedicated not only to Athena Polias, but also to Cecrops, the mythical founder of Athens, his son Erechtheos, and even Poseidon, the sea god who challenged Athena for possession of the city. The temple was divided into sections. The eastern part housed a statue dedicated to Athena, while the western section jointly belonged to Poseidon and Erechtheos. Meanwhile, King Cecrops' grave was believed to be under the caryatid porch. Under the temple was a crypt that was said to contain the sacred snakes of Athena. The snakes may have had a sweet tooth because the priestesses of Athena allegedly fed them honey cakes. The Parthenon is one of the most well-known buildings in the world and an enduring symbol of ancient Greek civilization. While it is located on the Acropolis, the building is not a traditional temple. It was built by the sculptor Phidias and the architects Callicrates and Ictinus as a great monument to the glory of the city of Athens. That glory is evident in its many carvings. One of the most carved monuments in Greek architecture, the Parthenon's decorations depict several mythological scenes. These include the birth of Athena, her fight against Poseidon for the patronage of Athens, the gods' battle with the giants, and the procession of the great Panathenea.
Oh, this place is huge. I have the other game, but I'm just gonna run around and learn about it.
The Parthenon's inner chamber, or cella, contained a massive statue of Athena that was considered to be one of the sculptor Phidias's greatest masterpieces. The statue was chryselephantine, a combination of gold and ivory. To justify the steep cost of its construction, Pericles told Athenians that the statue was a gold reserve, which could be disassembled in times of economic distress. The cella also allegedly contained a pool, whose main purpose was to control the room's humidity, which helped preserve the statue's ivory.
Push that old man, I'm sorry. It's just it's pretty cool that they have this in the game where you can just kind of learn about them. We're already
Athens' treasury was located in the Parthenon, where it was believed to be protected by Athena herself. The treasury contained objects of great value, acquired from different conquests, as well as a mass of minted silver coins and various offerings to Athena. Pericles also decided to move the entirety of the Delian League's treasure to the Parthenon in 454 BCE. This was a great testament to Athens' power over the rest of Greece. The riches were divided into two parts, the Demosia, which belonged to the city, and the Hiera Cremata, which was dedicated to the goddess and only used for religious purposes.
And what did you think of the Acropolis? It truly is quite something, isn't it? A sacred sanctuary and an architectural marvel, all in one. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask.
A quiz?
You're confident enough for a test? Very well. Let us see how much you know. Which two gods competed for Athens' patronage?
Oh, jeez.
Correct. It was Poseidon and Athena who fought for Athens' patronage. As for who won, the answer is in the city's name. On to the next question. Who sculpted the statue of Athena in the Parthenon? Praxiteles sculpted a marble statue of Artemis that stood in the Vravronion. Try again.
Dang it.
Correct. The renowned sculptor Phidias made the statue, which was considered one of his masterpieces. And now, the final question. Which king's tomb was believed to be under the caryatid porch? That is correct. Cecrops was the mythological first king of Athens, and his tomb was said to be under the Erechtheion. It seems you know much about this place. Well done, wanderer. Very well. On to the next tour.
I don't know if I should do this off stream. Since there's not really mentioned gameplay, it's just learning. Let's see what this next tour is. So I can unlock these people by going on the tours. Gotcha. Well, let's see. Let's see if I can actually play the game. Alright, 1 second, chat. Oh. Alright, so I have to. I thought I already downloaded this. Yes, thank you. So this is playable in about 15 minutes. So can I keep playing this, or does that have to? Okay, so I can keep playing this. I think. I think I can still play while this downloads in the background, so we're gonna do that. I'm just gonna load this one back up and then hop back in. I thought the Discovery Tour was playing these points in time. Assassin's Creed, but we'll learn some more, educate ourselves, and then jump into the actual game. We used to play games. Sure. We got 20-something minutes to burn.
Welcome, traveler, to the ruins of Mykine. My name is Herodotus, and I am a traveler from Hyrcanassus. I retrace the cause of various events, such as wars and great calamities. I describe what I see and record what I'm told, all with the aim of providing a better understanding of why these things occur. Look for me to introduce you to many sites. It is humbling to stand in the remnants of such a great civilization. Looking at these ruins, I am reminded that the past is never as far behind us as we think. These are the ruins of Mykine, center of the old Mykinian civilization. It was home to great warriors and heroes. In many ways, places like Athens and Sparta stand on the shoulders of its accomplishments. This tour will take you through its ruins and introduce you to its most important monuments, revealing its history in the process. I hope you enjoy yourself. I'll be waiting for you at the end of your visit.
The Mycenaean civilization flourished in the Late Bronze Age between 1600 and 1200 BCE. During this period, it was mainly located in the Peloponnese and central Greece. Mycenaeans were known for exploring distant lands. Notably, they battled the Hittite allied city of Volusa in a conflict that was believed to be the inspiration for Homer's Trojan War. But the Mycenaean people didn't only travel to fight. They learned much from their neighbors, the Minoans of Crete, such as how to write syllabic script on clay tablets. Such tablets provide evidence that Mycenaeans spoke an early form of Greek. They also tell of how great Mycenaean kings ruled over their warriors from opulent palaces in places like Mycenae, Thebes, and Knossos. The entrance to Agamemnon's citadel, or the Lion Gate, is one of the most iconic monuments in Mycenae. It is impressive for both its height and for the intimidating rendering on its relief, which depicts two lions standing on either side of a column. Unfortunately, the lions' heads, which were presumably made of a precious metal or higher quality stone, have been lost to time. The gate was most likely meant to greet a triumphant king returning home from successful military campaigns and to awe foreign visitors. When these shafts were discovered by archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann in 1876, He believed the 6
Let's stay on track
gold-filled
on the
graves
tour.
to be connected with the family
Yo,
of the
I
great
would
king
legit do this in real
Agamemnon,
life.
even going so far as to proclaim a gold mask he found within
Like, I would love
to
to
be
see
the
all
death
this.
mask of Agamemnon. However, this was refuted by later excavations, which showed that the 19 bodies buried in the shafts dated back to a few hundred years before Agamemnon was even born. In fact, at the time of the body's burial, the Lion Gate and the citadel walls had not even been built yet. It's estimated that the people in the graves were members of the first Mycenaean dynasty. The graves later became a place of worship for Mycenaean kings, who raised walls to protect them. These walls helped preserve several incredible artifacts, including women's jewelry, death masks, and masterfully crafted weapons.
Sorry, I'm trying to update this.
By 1250 BCE, Mycenae was at the height of its power, and its living quarters and workshops were numerous. Houses were built everywhere, from the top of the palace's hill near the king's residence, to the slopes and terraces within the walls, to the nearby hills outside the citadel. At one point, the citadel's walls even had to be enlarged to make room for more quarters. The people who lived inside the citadel were those with high status in either the military, religious, or administrative sectors of the kingdom. This is reflected by the ceramic and metal vessels inside the houses, as well as their painted, plastered walls.
Wow, that's crazy. That's how it looks in 2016. I really need to play all these games if this is, if they reenact most of the stuff back in the day.
A
like the
traveler
Assassin's
seeking an
Creed
audience with the king
China.
would have first ascended a steep ramp from the Lion Gate to the citadel's summit. Here, they would have walked into the palatial complex through a grand entrance called the Propylon. Once inside, their gaze would immediately be drawn to the palace's main hall, a monumental area known as the Megaron. The vividly decorated Megaron, which glittered with precious objects and colorful frescoes in its heyday, was where the king would have received the traveler. If the king was feeling generous, he would have shared with the visitor the palace's most marvelous feature, its commanding and majestic view, which stretched from the plain of Argolis to the gleaming Aegean Sea. It was in this palace where a legendary Mycenaean king like Agamemnon would have held court. According to Homer and other poets, Agamemnon led the Greeks in the sack of Troy. Stories say that he was a fearsome warrior on par with Achilles, but also an overly ambitious and arrogant ruler. He sacrificed his own daughter, Iphigenia, to convince Artemis to grant his ship's passage to Troy. After conquering the city, he returned to Mycenae with mounds of riches, and a Trojan named Cassandra as his concubine. Agamemnon's wife Clytemnestra was not pleased with her husband's sacrifice of their daughter. She plotted to murder her husband out of anger. The plot was successful, and, depending on the version of the story, Agamemnon was either murdered in his bath by Clytemnestra or killed by his cousin Aegisthus during a banquet.
It's pretty cool that we actually don't know. That's why it's so I can't wait for the new game. So was that the end of this tour? Bruh.
You've completed the tour. I trust it was an eye-opening experience. Though it did not last, Mycenae was a sort of precursor to what would eventually become the Greek civilization we know today. It's important we remember them, if only to avoid repeating their mistakes. Now, what else would you like to do? Then let's begin. First, I have quite a simple question. Which ancient city may have been the inspiration for Homer's depiction of Troy? No, the Meginians who were at war with Troy in the first place.
Man, I don't know this one.
Yes, the Mycenaeans' conflict with the city of Wilusa allegedly inspired Homer's Trojan War. Now, for the second question. Agamemnon sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia to convince which god to allow him to proceed to Troy? Yes, Agamemnon sacrificed Iphigenia to reconcile with Artemis, who then allowed his ships to pass to Troy. Now, one last question. What was the name of Agamemnon's Trojan concubine? Correct. Following the sack of Troy, Agamemnon sailed home with a Trojan prophetess named Cassandra. You've studied the ruins well, traveler. I appreciate your desire for more knowledge. Let us continue.
Welcome, friend, to this especially sacred part of the Olympian Sanctuary. My name is Varnavas, and I am a ship captain. Don't be fooled by my scarred eye. I've seen my share of combat, I mostly stick to trading these days. Well, trading and introducing visitors like you to wonderful sights like these. This place is practically vibrating with divine energy. I feel like if I look over my shoulder right now, Zeus will be staring back at me. The Sanctuary of Olympia was dedicated to Zeus, king of the gods. It had close connections to the divine, as you will see very soon. I'll come find you when you're done, and we can talk about what you've learned.
This workshop was built for the renowned sculptor Phidias after his work on the Acropolis of Athens. In 435 BCE, Phidias came to Olympia to begin working on the great chryselephantine statue of Zeus. He died 5 years later, shortly after completing his masterpiece. This grand statue would become one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Phidias's workshop was located right next to the Temple of Zeus. Its structure has been well preserved, mostly owing to its conversion to a church in the 5th century CE. Archaeologists have also discovered lots of ancient materials in the surrounding area, such as casting molds and sculpting tools. The most famous artifact, however, is a cup bearing an inscription that aggressively states, "I belong to Phidias." On the 5th and final day of the Olympic Games, victors attended a ceremony where they were crowned with olive wreaths and showered in flowers. The crowns came from the sacred olive tree of Zeus, which was planted near the god's temple. A young boy trimmed the branches with a golden sickle before giving them to the Hellanodikai to turn into wreaths. After the crowning ceremony, it was time for great feasting and celebration.
Άπα τον θάλασσαν αντλείς.
Pelops was both a legendary Greek hero and the mythical founder of the Olympic Games. According to legend, Pelops fell in love with the beautiful Hippodamia. Her father, Oenomaus, the king of Pisa, disapproved of their union. Having once heard a prophecy that he would be killed by his son-in-law, Oenomaus was known to challenge his daughter's suitors to chariot races, killing them when he won. Still, Pelops was determined to win Hippodamia's heart. Before the race, he enlisted the help of Poseidon, who gave him a golden chariot with 4 winged horses. Pelops was able to win both the race and the hand of his beloved, while Oenomaus was dragged to death by his horses. The start of this famous race was depicted on the eastern pediment of the Temple of Zeus. The Heraion was a temple dedicated to Hera. It is one of the oldest temples in the sanctuary, dating back to approximately 590 BCE. The structure included columns painted with images of women who won the Heraia, an athletic competition made up of running events. Every 4 years, 16 women were chosen to make a veil dedicated to Hera. These women also organized the competition, though they did not compete in it. The Heraia was unique for its focus on female athletes, in contrast to the male-exclusive Olympic Games. Hera was the goddess of women, marriage, family, and childbirth. She ruled Mount Olympus as Queen of the Gods, along with her husband and brother Zeus. Many mythological stories paint her as being annoyed at Zeus's many lovers and illegitimate offspring. In Greek art, Hera is usually depicted as matronly and regal, often wearing a crown or sitting on a throne. She is also sometimes seen holding a pomegranate, a symbol of both fertility and death. Hera's cult was very popular across Greece, and Olympia even minted her image on its coinage. One of the highlights of the Olympic Games was a ceremony that took place on the third day of the festival. It began with a procession of athletes, ambassadors, Hellenodikai, and animals. The group made their way around the Altis until they arrived at the Temple of Zeus. Then the animals were brought in front of the altar of Zeus and offered as a sacrifice. This sacrifice was known as a hecatomb, a word that originally described the sacrifice of 100 oxen. During the hecatomb, the bones and legs of the animals were burned and carried to the top of a mound of ashes from previous sacrifices. Meanwhile, the meat of the animals was saved for a large banquet held later in the evening. The Olympic Games were dedicated to Zeus, and all the ceremonies and events were hosted in his honor. It is no surprise that the largest temple in the sanctuary was the Temple of Zeus. While most temples were restricted to priests, the Temple of Zeus welcomed all who visited Olympia. This openness was most likely meant to show off the gold and ivory statue of Zeus that stood within the temple's walls. The building also featured art depicting both versions of the Olympic festival's founding myth. The eastern pediment showed a scene from the legendary race between Pelops and Oinomaos. The temple's metapiece, meanwhile, showed the 12 labors of Heracles, the other mythical founder of the games. Zeus was the god of sky and thunder, and king of the Olympians. He ruled the world from his home on Mount Olympus. The child of Cronus the Titan, Zeus overthrew his father and cast the Titans out in a great battle known as the Titanomachy. He had children of his own with his wife Hera, including Ares, Hephaestus, Hebe, and Eileithyia. He also had many children without Hera, much to her consternation, but there are too many to list here. Zeus was believed to have control over the lives of mortals, as his many epithets attest to. For example, his title Horkios made him a keeper of oaths, while Xenios was the name conferred to him as a protector of hospitality. In Greek art, Zeus was usually depicted holding a thunderbolt and sitting on a throne, befitting his position as king. The Temple of Zeus was home to the chryselephantine statue of Zeus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The statue, made of gold, ivory, and wood, was sculpted by the renowned artist Phidias. At 13 meters tall, it was as impressive looking as it was difficult to maintain. Oil was used to protect the wood and ivory from cracking, and to prevent general decay. While the statue does not exist today, it was thankfully described by Pausanias in great detail, so its legacy lives on.
again. I hope you enjoyed your visit and feel a little bit closer to the gods.
Well, as close as a mortal can get.
Is there anything else you'd like to do? Excellent. Let's see what you remember. Your first question is a simple one. Which goddess was Zeus's wife? Correct! Not only was Hera Zeus's wife, she was his sister as well.
But let's move on to the next question.
What kind of contest did Pelops win in his quest to marry Hippodamia? Yes, Pelops won a chariot race, thanks to Poseidon's help. And now, the final question. What was inscribed on the cup found near Phidias' workshop? Correct! Apparently, Phidias was very possessive of his things. Perhaps someone from the Sanctuary kept stealing them. But I'm getting off track. Excellent work, friend! You honor the gods with your great wisdom. Farewell for now, my friend. Hail, friend, and welcome to Olympia, home of the Olympic Games. I've often dreamed of competing in the games. If my sight was better, my legs and arms were stronger, and my coin purse was fatter. But that is not what the gods want, so I continue making the best of the path they've laid out for me. We're standing in the main section of Olympia, where the Olympic Games themselves took place. Over the course of the festival, athletes competed against each other for prestige and glory to honor themselves and their cities. Enjoy your visit, friend. I'll check in when you're done to make sure you've been paying attention.
The first day of the Olympic Festival began with a swearing-in ceremony for the participating athletes, trainers, and judges. The ceremony took place in front of the altar of Zeus Horkios, or Zeus of the Oath. Athletes would swear that they would follow the Olympic rules, while judges promised to be fair and unbiased. Then the competitions began, starting with a contest between heralds and trumpeters over who would have the privilege of announcing the games. The first day's athletic competitions consisted of wrestling, running, and boxing events for the youngest athletes, aged 12 to 18. The second day began with a grand procession into the Hippodrome to celebrate the start of the popular equestrian events. The most anticipated and spectacular of these was the Quadriga, a four-horse chariot race. Horse racing events were unique in that the winner was not the most skilled jockey, but the owner of the fastest horse or chariot. The Spartan princess Caniska once took advantage of this loophole to skirt the rule that women weren't allowed to compete, and earned 2 Olympic victories in the process. The rule also allowed for occasionally strange results, like in 416 BCE, when the statesman Alcibiades entered 7 chariots into a race and won 1st, 2nd, and 4th place. After the equestrian competitions, the 40,000 spectators migrated to the stadium to watch the Pentathlon events. When the day's events were over, funeral rites were performed for the hero Pelops, the mythical founder of the Olympic Games. The night ended with a celebratory feast and a great parade in honor of the day's victors. Victory at the Olympic Games was one of the highest honors a mortal could achieve, and there were several ways to immortalize that honor. Some athletes had statues erected of themselves, while others commissioned poets to write them victory odes. Oral tradition was very important to the Greeks. These odes, called eponychia, were often composed by the finest poets in the land, such as Pindar, Simonides, and Bacchylides. They were usually played at banquets and celebrations attended by the triumphant athlete or upon his departure from Olympia. The pentathlon took place at the stadium on the second day. As its name implies, it was made up of 5 events: discus throwing, javelin throwing, jumping, racing, and wrestling. There are several differences between the ancient version of events and their contemporary counterparts. For example, ancient long jumpers held weights in their hands to give them momentum to launch, since there was no run-up before the jump. Similarly, if an athlete won the first 3 events, they were immediately declared the winner, instead of being judged by their overall performance in all 5 events. Running events work the same as they do today, with the notable exception of all the athletes being nude. As for wrestling, competitors were not divided by weight class as they are today, but instead by age. The winner was the first to throw his opponent to the ground 3 times.
So, Origin's just finished. Probably gonna finish this out. And then,
Day 3 started with the most important event of the festival. A procession of Hellenodikai, ambassadors, competitors, and animals made their way to the great altar in front of the Temple of Zeus. The animals were then offered as the official sacrifice of the festival. The afternoon of Day 3 was dedicated to foot racing events. Running was the oldest event of the Games, and in fact was the only event at the first Olympics. The main race was called the Stadion, which was a sprint of around 180 meters. The winner was granted the honor of lending his name to the 4-year period between the Games. This period was known as the Olympiad. The 4 years that followed the first Games in 776 BCE were known as the Olympiad of Acropolis of Athens, the first Olympic champion. Once all the competitions were over, a public banquet was held in the Parthenon to celebrate the day's victors. Day 4 was mainly for combat events. Wrestling matches were held in the morning, followed by boxing and pancration. Pancration was a no-holds-barred mix between wrestling and boxing. Almost all moves were permitted, except for biting, poking the eyes or mouth, and striking the genitals. The event was very popular, and it was seen as the ultimate expression of strength and technique. Later on in the afternoon, there was a unique racing event called the Hoplitodromos, or Race in Armor. In this event, competitors wore a helmet and held a shield to simulate running in the battlefield. The Hellenodikai, or judges of the Greeks, were both the game's adjudicators and their organizers. They hailed from Elis, the city in charge of the Sanctuary of Olympia, and new judges were elected each Olympiad. They had several responsibilities. Before the game started, they decided which athletes would be allowed to compete and supervise their training. They also drew lots to make the competition brackets. During the games themselves, they picked the winners and kept an eye out for foul play. For the latter, they were assisted by stick and whip-wielding umpires who stood near the athletes and punished them if they were caught cheating. Victory in Olympia was one of the most prestigious honors in all of Greece. Not only would victors be showered in glory in their home city, but their names would be known across Greece. The temptation to glory led some athletes to break their oath to Zeus and cheat. This could be dangerous, as there were many possible punishments should cheaters be caught. They could be disqualified and fined, or if they were caught cheating during a match, they would be beaten by nearby umpires. The most powerful deterrent of cheating, however, was shame. At the foot of Mount Kronios, and on the way to the stadium, were a group of bronze statues called Zanes, the plural of Zeus. These statues were inscribed with the names of the cheating athletes, how they cheated, and the fine that was imposed. The Zanes, which were funded by cheaters' fines, were strategically placed to be highly visible. Individuals or even entire cities could be found guilty of cheating. The Parthenon was the administrative center of the cult of Olympia and the Olympic Games. The building housed the sanctuary's priests, as well as the game's officials. It was also used to stage the grand banquet held on the evening of the third day to honor victors. It also had a sacred function. Its central chamber was the location of the Fire of Hestia, a sacred flame that burned day and night. This fire was used to light the other altars around the sanctuary. This practice may have partially inspired the modern tradition of carrying the Olympic torch.
Hello again! I hope you enjoyed your visit. With their spectacular events and lavish banquets, the Olympic Games were a feast for the senses. I am certain even Zeus himself was entertained by the festivities. Now, is there anything else you'd like to do?
Wonderful! Let the mental Olympics begin. Let's start with an easy one. Which notable woman won an event in the games? No, Aspasia did not participate in the games. Try again. Correct! She won 2 equestrian events thanks to her savvy horse purchases. This next question is slightly more challenging. Which of the following is not a famous Greek poet? Pindar was one of the greatest poets in the Greek world. Choose another. I'm afraid Vachilides was a poet, and a good one too. Try again. Simonides was a poet best known for his ability to describe everyday life with clarity and simplicity. Try a different answer. You are right! Thrasydus was a renowned Spartan general, and he didn't have time for rhymes and pretty words. Time for the final question. How many events were in the Pentathlon? No, 10 events would be a decathlon, which would be intense even for the Olympic Games. Try another answer. Yes, the Greek word for pende means 5, and the pentathlon had 5 events. Well done, my friend. You truly possess a sharp mind. Very well. Safe travels, my friend.
So, switch over